The sun loomed high above the savanna, its merciless heat casting shimmering waves over the parched earth. It was the heart of the dry season in the African plains, when water became a rare and precious thing. And danger crept silently through the golden grasses. Every living creature felt the thirst. Every breath carried the weight of survival. Among the scattered trees and cracked soil, a cheetah mother moved cautiously with her only cub. His name was Lumo. He was barely 5 months old. His limbs still unsteady, his body a patchwork of growing muscles and playful energy. It was his first true expedition, his first lesson in survival. His mother, sleek and alert, led him through the brush with careful purpose. Today was not about play or rest. Today, she would teach him how to find food and, more urgently, how to find water. Lumo followed close, his spotted coat blending imperfectly with the dry grass. His tongue lolled from his mouth, and his tiny paws crunched noisily over brittle leaves. Though young, the thirst was overwhelming. His throat was dry, and his mind buzzed with curiosity. He'd never been to a river before. He had only tasted water from shallow puddles and licks from his mother's fur. But now, the scent of water was near, cool and tempting. His mother paused on a ridge, her body stiff with focus. Her golden eyes swept the area around a narrow riverbank ahead. It was little more than a stream this time of year, muddy and sluggish, but even that was a treasure in this season. Lumo saw the glint of water through the reeds, and instinct surged within him. He wanted to drink, needed to. His mother growled low in her throat and slinked forward, telling him to wait. She descended into the thickets near the bank, disappearing for a moment to scout the area. Her instincts told her to be wary. Predators often lingered where prey came to drink. But Lumo's thirst clouded his caution. The moment his mother was out of sight, he darted forward, ignoring the lesson and the risk. His tiny paws scampered through the underbrush, and in seconds he was at the edge of the river. The water shimmered like a mirror. He lowered his head, lapping greedily. The surface rippled. A pair of yellow eyes opened beneath the murk. Without warning, the river exploded. A massive crocodile, its body armored in mossy scales, surged upward from the water. Its jaws snapped open, and in an instant, it clamped down on Lumo's hind leg with terrifying force. The cub screamed, a high, desperate, shattering cry that echoed across the plain. The crocodile thrashed, dragging him toward the water, its tail lashing through the reeds. Lumo clawed at the mud, his tiny front paws scrambling, tearing at the ground. Blood mixed with water as the predator pulled him inch by inch toward the depths. Nearby, a herd of African buffalo had been grazing in uneasy silence. Startled by the cry, they turned in unison. Dozens of heavy heads rose, nostrils flaring, eyes locked on the chaos unfolding at the river's edge. For a heartbeat, all was still. Then came the roar. Lumo's mother erupted from the grass, a blur of fury and speed. She charged the crocodile with reckless abandon, hissing and yowling, her claws outstretched. She pounced onto the predator's armored back, biting and slashing, trying to force it to release her cub. The crocodile twisted, its grip unrelenting. Lumo squealed, his eyes wild with terror. The water lapped higher around his body, his strength fading. And still, the buffalo watched, muscles coiled and horns gleaming. The largest among them, the bull of the herd, took a step forward. Then another. With a sudden, thunderous bellow, the entire herd surged into motion. Buffalo hooves pounded the ground like a war drum, sending tremors through the earth. The crocodile sensed the vibrations and paused. The cheetah mother jumped back just in time as the bull reached the river's edge and lowered his massive horns. With explosive force, the buffalo rammed into the crocodile's side. A second and third joined the charge, their powerful bodies colliding with the predator in a flurry of mud, water, and fury. The crocodile released Lumo with a final wrenching twist and slid backward into the water, disappearing beneath the surface in a flurry of splashes and bubbles. Lumo lay limp at the river's edge, soaked and shivering, his hind leg torn and bleeding. His mother rushed to his side, licking his face, nudging him upright. He whimpered, but his eyes fluttered open. The buffalo herd stood in a semicircle behind them, snorting and pawing the earth, guarding the space. The leader watched silently before turning and leading the group away, their role in the moment fulfilled. The sun continued to fall toward the horizon, casting a soft orange glow over the shaken landscape. The cheetah mother carefully lifted her cub by the scruff, gently dragging him away from the water, back into the safety of the grass. She paused on a rise, laying him down in a patch of warm earth, and began cleaning his wounds with slow, rhythmic strokes. Lumo shivered under her touch, his small body trembling with pain, but he was alive. His wide eyes locked on hers, and something passed between them, understanding, remorse, love. The lesson had been harsh, but it had been learned. Never go to water alone. The sun dipped lower, and the stars began to whisper into the sky. Crickets chirped, and the air cooled. In the silence of the savannah, a mother curled protectively around her injured cub, and the long night stretched before them, quiet, fierce, and full of the will to survive. The world narrowed to pain and panic. Lumo's tiny body thrashed violently, caught in the iron grip of death. The crocodile's teeth, razor-sharp and jagged, had pierced deep into his hind leg, clamping down with the cruel certainty of a trap. The cold, reptilian snout held fast as the beast began its slow, sinister retreat toward the murky waters of the river. The young cheetah screamed, a desperate, ragged cry that tore through the dry air like a blade. His voice echoed against the stones and brush, rising into a crescendo of pure, primal fear. His eyes, wide and full of terror, caught the glare of the sun reflected off the water. Everything seemed to slow. The dust hung in the air. The birds above wheeled in frantic circles. And Lumo, in that stretched, surreal instant, could feel every heartbeat, every breath, every vibration in the earth. He fought, driven not by skill or training, but by raw instinct. He twisted his torso, flailed his forelegs, and raked his tiny claws across the crocodile's snout. His pads were soft, his claws underdeveloped, but he struck with all the fury a 5-month-old cub could muster. The crocodile growled low, a deep, thunderous rumble, and shook its head violently. Lumo's body whipped side to side like a ragdoll, his claws slicing the air, trying desperately to catch skin, scale, anything. Blood splashed across the riverbank. It ran in thin, bright streams down Lumo's spotted flank, pooling in the mud, turning it dark and sticky. His mouth opened, gasping for breath, his cries growing weaker, his body trembling. The light in his eyes began to dim. But then, something broke the silence. A sound that did not belong in the wilderness. A blast. Loud, sudden, shattering. It echoed from the far edge of the plain like the crack of a thunderclap. Loud enough to make the crocodile flinch. For a heartbeat, everything paused, the birds, the wind, even the river seemed to hold its breath. The crocodile's yellow eyes shifted, uncertain. A second blast rang out, followed by a screeching metallic clang, and the unmistakable sound of an engine roaring across the dry plain. Dust rose in the distance. The crocodile hesitated, and in that hesitation, Lumo acted. His claws, slick with blood and mud, found the soft flesh near the predator's nostrils. He raked down with a cry, gouging shallow lines into its face. The crocodile reared back, more in surprise than pain, and opened its jaws just enough. Lumo slipped free. His leg, torn and twisted, gave out beneath him, and he collapsed onto the riverbank with a wet thud. He gasped, limbs twitching, trying to crawl, to drag himself back into the grass. Behind him, the crocodile snarled, torn between fight and flight. Then came the third sound. A blaring electronic screech, a predator alarm. Loud and unnatural, it bounced off the rocks and echoed over the water. It was a deterrent system, designed to mimic the warning calls of large territorial animals. And it was working. The crocodile hissed, backing into the water, with a final splash and a violent flick of its tail. It vanished beneath the surface, leaving behind only ripples and blood swirling in the mud. Lumo lay trembling, his breath shallow. He heard the engine now, closer, louder. Tires crunched over dry grass. The scent of fuel and dust filled the air. A vehicle skidded to a halt near the ridge above the river. Dr. Ethan Miles jumped out of the driver's seat, his boots hitting the ground in a cloud of dust. His eyes scanned the scene, wide with urgency. He saw the blood first, then the broken shape of the cub struggling to move. "No, Lumo," he breathed, recognition dawning as he rushed forward. He dropped to his knees, assessing the damage. The cub's leg was mangled, but still attached, breathing shallow, pulse weak, but alive. He reached for his field pack. Hands moving quickly, he sprayed antiseptic on the wound, then wrapped the leg tightly in gauze and soft cloth. Lumo whimpered but didn't resist. "You're okay," Ethan murmured. "You held on." He looked over his shoulder, still alert for danger, but the river remained still. He gently lifted the cub into a blanket and cradled him against his chest. Blood soaked through the fabric. But Ethan didn't flinch. He carried Lumo to the vehicle and laid him across the back seat, securing him in a nest of towels and medical supplies. Then he turned back and planted 2 motion-triggered cameras at the riverbank. If that crocodile returned, he would know. Back in the vehicle, Ethan started the engine. "We're getting you help," he said softly. "You're not done yet, little guy." Lumo, eyes fluttering, let out a soft, exhausted chirp. The car rumbled over the savannah, leaving behind the scene of terror. But as the river faded into the distance, a new fight began, not against the jaws of a crocodile, but against time, infection, and the limits of nature. Ethan kept one hand on the wheel, the other occasionally reaching back to rest on Lumo's head. "You're a fighter," he said, voice rough. "You've got more to do, more to see. We're not losing you." The sky above blazed orange with the coming sunset. And somewhere in the tall grass, a cheetah mother lifted her head, sensing something had changed. The story was not over. Not yet. The African sky glowed with the intense heat of midday, waves of light shimmering over the endless stretch of golden grass and cracked riverbanks. The dry season held the land in a suffocating grip. Waterholes were shrinking, and predators grew bolder, hungrier. But even in this harsh season, there were eyes watching from above. Zara Mbele adjusted her drone controller, narrowing her eyes as the screen flickered with a faint distortion. The local wildlife ranger, born and raised in this land, was known for her sharp instincts and steady nerves. Her drone buzzed several meters overhead, gliding silently over a stretch of sparse river where recent animal movement had been recorded. Suddenly, a strange sound cut through the ambient noise in her earpiece, high-pitched, fractured, and heart-wrenching. A cub's scream. Zara froze. The drone's mic wasn't powerful enough to pick up quiet disturbances unless they were close, which meant whatever was happening was near. She quickly shifted the drone's focus, scanning the scrub along the riverbank. Then she saw it. In the grainy live feed, a young cheetah cub flailed on the muddy shore, caught in the jaws of a massive crocodile. The predator was dragging the cub backward, the waterline growing closer with every terrifying second. Zara's heart jumped to her throat. She dropped the drone controls, snatched her emergency pack from the back of her patrol jeep, and gunned the engine toward the coordinates. The jeep bounced violently over the rough terrain, sending dust flying as the wheels tore across the ground. "Hang on, little one," she whispered. Within minutes, she reached the overlook above the river. The crocodile was still there, its monstrous tail swaying as it heaved itself backward into the shallows. The cub, limp and bloody, was nearly submerged. Zara didn't hesitate. She reached for her deterrence kit, developed for non-lethal wildlife intervention, pulling out a bright orange flare, a small canister of concentrated bioscent repellents derived from local predator markings, and a device resembling a pistol but designed to emit ultrasonic bursts. She dashed down the slope toward the riverbank, shouting as she went, "Hey, get off him!" The crocodile paused, startled by the sudden approach. Zara lit the flare. A burst of fire cracked into the air, its hissing and bright flash searing the space between them. In the same instant, she raised the ultrasonic deterrent and fired a series of sharp pulses. The air shimmered with invisible sound waves, tones piercing and unbearable to the sensitive hearing of reptiles and predators. The crocodile reared back, shaking its head. Zara took another step forward and sprayed the repellent into the air. The pungent odor mimicked the territorial scent of dominant big cats, harmless to the cheetah cub, but deeply disturbing to the crocodile's ancient senses. The creature hissed, clamping its jaws one final time before releasing the cub with a loud, wet snap. It slipped backward into the water, eyes watching, tail vanishing in a sluggish wave. Zara dropped to her knees beside the cub. Blood soaked the ground. Lumo's body twitched faintly, his breath shallow. She pressed her ear to his chest. The heartbeat was faint, but there. "You're alive," she murmured. "Stay with me." She retrieved a sterile cloth from her kit, pressing it gently to the worst of the wounds. Her hands moved fast but steady, wrapping the cub's leg while whispering to soothe him in her native Xhosa. The rhythm of her words like a lullaby. "I've got you now, little warrior," she whispered. Her comms buzzed. She quickly radioed the reserve station. "This is Zara. I've got a juvenile cheetah male. Maybe 5 or 6 months. Injured. Crocodile attack. Alive but critical. Sending location now. Copy that. Zara. Medical team en route." She looked down at Lumo. He was barely conscious, his breaths uneven, legs twitching in the dirt. But he wasn't giving up. "Don't go, little one. You've come too far," she said gently, as she waited for help to arrive. She kept the ultrasonic device pointed at the river, in case the crocodile decided to return. But it didn't. The river was silent now, as if ashamed of what had almost happened. Zara shaded Lumo with her body, shielding him from the sun. She dabbed cool water on his head and kept speaking to him in a soft, steady voice. He stirred once, then again, his eyes fluttering open for a moment, just long enough to see her face. She smiled. "That's right. You'll remember me someday." 20 minutes later, the medical team arrived. They worked swiftly, lifting Lumo onto a stretcher and checking his vitals. Zara briefed them quickly, then watched as they drove off in a cloud of dust, carrying the brave cub toward recovery. She stood alone on the riverbank, the flare still smoldering behind her, the wind carrying away the scent of blood and fear. Zara looked toward the sky where her drone still circled overhead, recording everything. She pressed her comms again. "Ranger Zara reporting," she said quietly. "Crocodile repelled. Cub alive. Intervention successful." She took a long breath, her heart still pounding, and then, slowly, she turned her gaze back toward the water. It shimmered innocently under the sun, as if it hadn't nearly swallowed a life. But not today. Not on her watch. The jeep roared across the savannah, its headlights cutting a golden path through the dust-choked twilight. The sun had fallen behind the hills, leaving behind a sky of deep purples and oranges, with stars beginning to pierce the curtain of dusk. Zara Mbele sat behind the wheel, jaw tight, one hand steady on the gearshift and the other resting lightly on the covered crate beside her. Inside the crate, nestled on a thick layer of clean cloth and straw, was Lumo, the injured cheetah cub who had somehow survived the crushing jaws of a crocodile. His breathing had steadied slightly, but he remained unconscious, his small body occasionally twitching in pain. The makeshift bandages Zara had wrapped around his leg were soaked with antiseptic and warmth. But she knew he needed proper care, and fast. The rescue station wasn't far now. Just a few kilometers more. Zara picked up her radio mic and pressed it to her lips. Ranger Mbele to rescue base. Come in. A moment of static. Go ahead, Zara, came the voice of a young vet. Calm but alert. I'm en route with a juvenile cheetah. Male, 5 to 6 months. Significant trauma to the hind leg. Blood loss. Victim of a crocodile attack. Was able to intervene. ETA 10 minutes. Prep the heated table and IV. Also, she paused, glancing at the cub. I need a broadcast for a tagged female cheetah, mother likely still in the area. Could be looking for him. Copy that. We'll run a trace. Be ready on arrival. As the base camp came into view, a low structure built of wood and earth, half hidden among tall brush, Zara felt a wave of relief. The solar lamps lining the perimeter blinked into life as she rolled to a stop and jumped out. Already shouting instructions. Clear the table. Let's go. He's still alive, but not stable. 2 veterinary technicians rushed forward and helped lift the crate into the small operating hut. Inside, soft light glowed over a clean steel table. Heat lamps flickering above. The warmth was important, not just for comfort, but to keep Lumo's body from slipping into shock. Zara opened the crate gently. Lumo let out a tiny, raspy mewl, his first sound since the riverbank. His eyes fluttered, unfocused. I know, little one, Zara whispered. You're safe now. She stayed close as the team worked. They cleaned his wounds, removed the temporary dressings, and inspected the leg. Miraculously, there were no broken bones, just torn muscle and deep lacerations. Painful, but survivable. A vet inserted a small IV into his front leg, administering fluids and a mild sedative. Another brought over a bowl of warm, liquefied meat broth and placed it under the heat lamp. Lumo didn't respond at first. But when Zara crouched beside him and gently stroked the fur behind his ear, his head turned, slowly, shakily, his tongue flicked out, tasting the broth. Good boy, she murmured. Drink, you need it. He licked again, then again. Hope bloomed in Zara's chest. As the night deepened and the station settled into silence, Zara stayed behind after the others had gone. She moved a padded mat beside Lumo's table and lay down, her boots still on, her eyes half open, keeping watch. Outside, hyenas howled faintly in the distance, and the stars above sparkled with quiet brilliance. Some time after midnight, a soft weight pressed against her arm. She opened her eyes. Lumo had dragged himself closer to the edge of the table. One paw hung limply over the side, but his face was buried against her sleeve. His breath was soft, but deliberate. Zara sat up slowly, surprised. She hadn't expected this. Cheetah cubs weren't known for bonding quickly with humans, not unless they'd been raised in captivity. But this cub, he wasn't just seeking warmth. He was seeking her. She adjusted his blanket and leaned closer, letting her hand rest against his back. "I'm not your mother, Lumo," she said quietly, "but I promise I'll help you find her." He made a small, contented sound, a sound of trust. Zara stayed there the rest of the night, the stars watching over them both. The next morning broke in gold and birdsong. Lumo stirred, blinking under the light. He tried to sit up, but Zara was there immediately, easing him back. "Take it slow," she said, offering another bowl of broth, this time with added vitamins and protein. He ate more this time. Not much, but enough to keep fighting. Later that day, a ping came through the tracking system. "Zara," the vet called. "We've got a signal." Zara rushed to the console. On the screen, a blinking green dot moved steadily near a cluster of scrubland about 8 kilometers east of the river. "It's her," the vet said. "Tagged female. She's circling the area where the attack occurred." Zara's hand clenched into a fist. "She's looking for him." 3 days passed beneath the relentless African sun. At the wildlife rescue outpost, Lumo's strength grew with each sunrise. Though his wounds remained tender and his gait still limped slightly, he no longer whimpered in his sleep. He was alert now, responsive, his golden eyes sharp with new life. Each time Zara approached, he chirped softly, an endearing, high-pitched sound, reserved only for her. But as Lumo healed, something else stirred within him. Restlessness. Each morning, he moved closer to the gate of his enclosure. He sniffed the wind more frequently, ears twitching at every rustle in the bush. He had not forgotten the pain of the crocodile's bite, but neither had he forgotten his mother. Instinct called to him, louder now with every passing hour. And then, just before dawn on the third day, a motion-triggered alert pinged through the camp. Zara sat bolt upright in her cot and rushed to the monitoring screen. A camera trap positioned near the old riverbank flickered to life. The footage was grainy, but unmistakable. A lone female cheetah paced along the muddy edge, her sleek frame tense with emotion. She moved in looping patterns, sniffing, pausing, circling back. Then, she stopped and lifted her head. She called. The sound wasn't loud, but it carried with urgency, a mix of growl and chirp. A unique vocalization reserved for locating cubs. She called again, and again. Zara felt a lump rise in her throat. She never gave up. She whispered. Lumo, now resting near the side of the enclosure, lifted his head. He blinked, turned his ears toward the monitor, as if he could hear her even through the silence. The team acted quickly. Before the morning was over, Zara had packed the transport crate and loaded Lumo gently inside. This time, he didn't resist. He sat upright, tail curled around his paws, alert but calm, as if he knew this was the journey he'd been waiting for. The jeep rumbled across the plains, cutting a careful path through tall grass and dry shrubs. The river, now quieter, glinted in the morning sun. Zara guided the vehicle along a ridge overlooking a sparse woodland, half dense with acacia trees and thornbush, half open to the golden light. It was here that the last signal had placed the mother cheetah. She killed the engine and stepped out, cradling her notebook and watching the trees with quiet intensity. Then she opened the crate. Lumo hesitated for only a second before stepping out. He stretched cautiously, his body slimmer but already reclaiming its grace. His nose twitched. The wind shifted. He froze. Zara saw the change instantly. His ears pricked forward. His eyes locked on a shape between the trees. Then came the sound. A single, soft chirp. His mother. Lumo bolted, not in fear, but in fierce, joyful recognition. The tall grass bent around his legs as he raced into the clearing. And there, emerging from the trees like a vision brought to life, was the cheetah mother. She sprinted toward him, and the distance between them vanished in seconds. They met in a flurry of spotted fur and dust, tumbling into each other, calling and chirping, heads rubbing, tails entwining. The reunion was not loud or dramatic, but it was deeply, heartbreakingly beautiful. Lumo pressed his head into his mother's neck. She responded by licking his ear, her grooming both instinctive and emotional. It was as if the lost days dissolved in that single moment of touch. Zara stood from a distance, silent. Her heart swelled, not with pride, but with humility. She had helped bring life back to where it belonged. But now her part in the story had ended. She wasn't meant to follow any further. She opened her notebook, flipping to a fresh page. Her fingers trembled as she wrote, in firm black ink, "The wild is harsh, but not heartless." She closed the book and looked up one last time. The two cheetahs were already disappearing into the trees. The cub now walking beside his mother, not limping, not hesitating. They vanished like ghosts into the savannah. Two shadows reunited by instinct, love, and resilience. Zara watched until the brush swallowed them completely. Then she turned, packed her gear, and left the wilderness to its own quiet miracle.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.